introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, I'm Tierra. I'm super excited to be on this podcast.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I guess we should give a little background information because we did record a podcast earlier, and that one can be found on Patreon, and I'm going to leave it up on Patreon. So if you would like to check it out, you can go ahead. But I personally was not happy with it.
I got a little frustrated in the middle, so...
Well, no, that's not why. Again, that's not why I wasn't happy with it. It was the way that I was talking. I was not communicating properly, and I felt like it needed to be redone because nobody would have really wanted to listen to that. So, anyways, this is the redo of it. It's fine. If you would like to, like I said, listen to the original podcast, it's bad. Well, it's not bad, but it's just not great. You can do that at Patreon. I'm not going to take it down from Patreon, and this one will be the replacement that gets released to the public. So this is how we are starting.
Cool. Sounds good.
So you scuba dive?
I do.
Yeah. So
Well,
what got you into scuba diving?
So my older brother scuba dives, or I don't know if he still does, but like he did for a long time when I was growing up, and he's like 5 years older than me. So when I was like 13 or 14, we were at this lake, and I had no previous experience scuba diving, and my older brother was like, "Hey, why don't you try out scuba diving? We'll just go off the dock. It'll be really great." And so I was like, yeah, cool. And for anybody that knows anything about scuba diving, is like, you kind of gotta like regulate your breathing. Otherwise, you just like tear through a tank of air like super fast. So I just went around the dock, and Craig was there watching me to make sure nothing went wrong. But the whole time I was just exhilarated. So I was like, just like looking underneath the water, and I was like so excited, but Craig was just like, he thought something went wrong with the tank because there was just this constant stream of bubbles. So he like pulled me up. He's like, "What's wrong?" He like checks everything. He's like, "There's nothing wrong." I was like, "Oh my god," I was so excited. He's like, "Show me how you were breathing." And I showed him, and he's like, "Oh, okay. So in other words, you used a whole tank of air in like 10 minutes."
Yeah.
Which is like, especially at like 5 feet, that would last you like an hour or more.
Okay.
So,
Fair. Well, I mean, it's good that you had that experience in something that was 5 feet deep instead of the ocean.
yeah, no, for sure. And then like I didn't really do it again after that. My brother went on and got all these certifications, and then I was working as a lifeguard in Strathmore, and this company would come in and do their in-pool training sessions in the Strathmore pool. And I would be on duty, and I'd like watch and like actually talk to the instructor when he had a break or whatever. And I was like, he's like, "Oh, actually for lifeguards I offer a discount because you have a lot of the water skills already that I don't have to teach you." So I was like, sweet. So I like kind of looked into it a little bit more and was like, yeah, this is something that I really like to do because it's interesting and cool, and like I like being in the water and under the water and everything else. So I went and I did my certifications and stuff, and yeah, I think it's so cool that you can be underneath the water and breathing. Like I feel like a mermaid or something.
Like a mermaid?
Yeah.
Have you always wanted to be a mermaid or
Always.
something?
I've always wanted to be a mermaid.
What is it with females wanting to be mermaids?
They're like these mystical, magical creatures.
Yeah.
And they're almost always represented as like a female form. It's one of the only like happy, magical creatures that are like purely female. The only other purely female creatures I can think of are like gorgons or harpies, and those aren't like happy, magical creatures.
Fair. I mean, because you just don't hear a lot of guys being like, yeah, I want to be a mermaid. Maybe they're out there. Maybe I'm being behind the times, let's say. I don't know.
I think it's
but
also like the name is like it is
mermaid.
like yeah.
I guess it is.
It's very female centric.
Well, yeah, but I guess mermen they call them.
Yeah.
If it's a man.
Or like that movie. Merman, Papa, merman.
What?
It's this really dumb movie. The title is gone. He's like, it's like set in New York, but he goes back to his like coal miner family, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so disappointed in my son doing these like beauty commercials where you're a mermaid," and he's like, "Merman, Papa." It's a really, really dumb movie.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
So, did your brother... Because you mentioned last time that your brother was possibly going to be an underwater welder.
Mm-hmm.
Is that why he was doing the scuba diving, or is it just something that he kind of always...
He got interested in it, and then he was like, oh, wait, I can do this as a job?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we grew up in the middle of nowhere, and, like, my dad taught us how to weld and everything else. So, my brother already had these skills, so he's like, oh, this would be an easy transition, because I know how to scuba dive and I know how to weld, so it's just, like, marrying the two, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, he went and did this schooling in Kelowna, and he really, really liked it, but he was kind of, like, hemming and hawing when the last couple semesters, because they started telling them, or maybe he started looking into them, into like the statistics of like underwater welders and like underwater professions. It's like, yeah, the like age range that you usually live to is like right around 30. Like lots of people don't live past then. You make tons of money up to that point, but yeah. So one of the reasons he didn't do it was because of that, and then the other one is he told me
the ocean is terrifying.
Yeah, it's terrifying actually. They told this story. They brought in this guy who'd worked on a rig out in the middle of the ocean. I don't know what they were doing out there, but he said that one of his buddies went down, and he was like a kilometer or so back down where it's like pitch black, right? So he had like his headlamp and he had his welding torch and he was down there welding. And he felt this just like absolutely massive thing swim behind him. And he's like, nope, not gonna turn around, not doing that. And then he like got sucked into something and then like spat back out.
Yeah.
And this guy was like, nope, and like ascended as fast as he could without getting like decompression sickness. And then, so they told that story and like other ones of just like seeing like crazy things. And Craig was like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah, I would, like, the ocean is so fucking terrifying. Like, I would never want to do anything in the ocean as a profession, but just in general. Like, it was called scuba diving. And what it was is instead of having the air tank on your back, the air tank floats on the surface. And then you just go down with a really long hose. Which, in hindsight, actually seems more dangerous because something could get fucked up with that. Like, it's a rubber hose. Like, it's not like,
Yeah,
we did it in Mexico, but
that was actually one of the other reasons that Craig didn't want to do it. Because, like, he trusted himself when he had the air on his back.
Yeah.
He had, like, a backup tank. He knew how to switch them over, everything like that. But a lot of the jobs, especially for underwater welding, require that you are breathing off of a tank that's on the boat.
Oh, okay.
And somebody else is in charge of your air supply.
Yeah.
And Craig just, like, he's like, I don't think I'd ever trust somebody enough for them to be in charge of my air.
Yeah, no, super fair. Like I said, like, in hindsight, it's easier, obviously, to go... And we didn't go down super far or anything like that, just because it was, like, a touristy thing in Mexico or whatever. I was, like, 14, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah, you wouldn't go past, like, 40, maybe 60 feet.
Yeah, no, and it's, like, you don't, like... It's also a hose, so, like, you probably don't have a hose that's that long, and any time it is longer. But, like, just like I said, in hindsight, thinking about it, it's, like, that was actually probably way more dangerous than just going down with a tank on your back, because... Like, something could happen to that hose, and then you're fucked. You're, like, super far down there, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, like, did that one time, and, like, it was cool experience, but like just looking around and like when you're in the middle of the ocean, like because they took us out on a catamaran and like you do it around these rocks or whatever, but you're in the middle of the fucking ocean and just looking around and being like, I could literally be attacked by from any angle, like above, below, any angle. Something could attack me from, and I would just be so helpless because I'm just so out of my element. Like humans are not like we are semi-designed to be underwater. Like there's the whole like aquatic ape theory or whatever that at some point humans split off from basically dolphins. I think it is. So at like one point they were living near shores, like proto-humans were living like near the shores, and some of them moved inland and became what humans are today, and the other ones stuck to the shores and continued to evolve into the water and became dolphins. I think that's what the aquatic ape theory is. But anyways, so we are like kind of designed to be in the water. Like also when you throw a baby in water, it instinctively knows like to close its eyes and hold its breath.
Actually, that's an interesting thing that you learn in lifeguarding.
Yeah.
Is some people will drown and they won't have any water in their lungs.
Yeah.
And it was this crazy phenomenon that for a while people couldn't figure out why that happened.
Yeah.
And it's because some people never lose that instinct to like close up their throat if you're underwater.
Yeah.
And so you'll drown because you'll lose oxygen, but there won't be any water in your lungs.
Well, yeah, and you never take a breath in because like...
Yeah. And, like, other people have that instinct where it's like, oh, I need to breathe. I'll breathe in no matter where I am.
Yeah, but that'll fuck you up even more because if you do end up getting saved at the last moment and then you have water in your lungs, then you're fucked from that. Because if you have, like, any sort of fluid in your lungs, that's, like, what pneumonia is, I think. It's just having fluid in your lungs.
Yeah, and that's something else that we would tell people is, like, if we dragged somebody out of the water and they had been underwater, even just for, like, a second, right? You, like, tell them, you're like, okay, listen, like, you're fine, obviously, but when you go home, for the next 24 hours, if you feel, like, flu-like symptoms, if you get a bad chest cough, if you, like, feel like you have fluid in your lungs or sinuses, go into the doctor. Because you can have secondary drowning.
Yeah.
Where you actually, like, there's people that have been saved out of the water and then drowned later.
Yeah.
Which is this bizarre thing.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, because, the thing you need to breathe shouldn't have fluid in it.
That's true.
But, yeah, the ocean, it's fucking terrifying. There's so many big things in it that we know about, like whales and sharks and giant squid and shit like that. But, and then there's so many giant things probably in there that we don't have any fucking clue about.
The, like, cool thing, well, I think it's cool, is, like, the giant squid that we've observed, most of them anyway, have been, like, babies, basically.
It's not cool.
So, like, they're even bigger.
Yeah. Well, it's just weird to think that, I think it's something like 2% of the world's oceans we've explored or something like that.
Yeah, but we've explored more of our moon.
Yeah, we've explored more in space than our own planet. And a podcast I listen to, like, they always say, like, if you saw some of the things that you see in the ocean and you saw that on, like, in outer space or in another planet, you'd be like, fucking aliens. Those are aliens. That is exactly what aliens are. But you can just go down into the ocean and see those things, and we're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. But like, like I said, if you just took those exact fucking beings and put them in space, it'd be like aliens.
Yeah.
So it's crazy to think about that kind of.
Well, like, even talking about, like, the ocean and how little we've explored it, there's, like, these fish, and I honestly don't remember what they're called, but there's these fish, and they've been around forever. They have, like, these weird fin patterns that, like, we know because we found fossils of these exact same fish. And we thought that they were extinct.
Yeah.
But they were down in this, like, weird area, and they found one. And they're like, oh my god. And it turns out that these fish are alive and exactly the same as the ones we found fossils of.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, we just didn't find them because the ocean is so freaking huge.
Yeah. Well, it's like there's like even just there's like a whole profession dedicated to that. I think is going out and finding extinct animals, basically, or animals that we thought previously were extinct. Mm-hmm. There's a whole profession based around, or there's a whole group of people. I don't know if it's a profession. I think it is. Anyways, it's basically dedicated to just finding animals that we thought were extinct and like seeing if they actually are extinct. Um, because as much as humanity does cover a vast swath of the earth, there are still so many places on the earth that are just like completely wild and just untouched by humans and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And the ocean's even crazier because, I mean, like, you look at something like crocodiles or sharks, and they've been around forever. And they're in their exact form, you know what I mean? Like, maybe a little bit bigger, like, in regards to sharks, because there's, like, the megalodons or whatever.
Something I think is really cool with a lot of ocean animals is they basically just keep growing.
Yeah.
Like, there's this crazy big shark, and she's, like, 20 or 40 feet long. I know that's a huge difference, but either way, it's a stupidly giant shark. And they have her on film, and you see her swimming past this guy in one of those like shark cages, and you're like, Jesus, she could bite right through the bars. Like, she's just crazy big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just cool. And, like, lobsters and stuff, like, there could be, like, 50-foot lobsters down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Because, like, we'd never see them.
Yeah. And that's another thing that's just been around forever is, like, lobsters and shit like that. It's just, it's crazy. And actually, to even think about it, like, at some point, we split off from those animals. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we split off from lobsters, say, maybe 100, I don't know about time, but about 1 billion years ago or something, or 300 million years ago. I don't know actually anything about actual evolutionary time and shit like that, but it's a really, really long time ago, and like we still have remnants of like lobster probably behavior in us, you know what I mean? That's just like so anciently ingrained way in the center of our brains, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how our brains like kind of evolved, was like we have the reptile brain, which is like the brain stem, and then there's, I think it's the primate brain, and that's kind of like a little bit bigger, and then it's like the human brain.
Yeah.
Where it's like maybe reptile, mammal, human, or something like that. But anyways, there's like 3 stages of the brain that like are very distinct and stuff like that. And like the reptile brain controls all our like base reactions and stuff like that, like our urges and stuff like that. And then like the primate brain, it kind of expands on that. And then the human brain basically gives us our like higher cognition and stuff like that.
Yeah. Actually, like speaking about like thinking and things like that is octopus.
Mm-hmm.
There's this theory that's going around. Well, it's more like a conspiracy type thing.
That octopus are aliens?
Yeah, because they don't share any sort of evolutionary things with almost any animal on Earth. Like, even their eyeballs have, like, evolved, like, crazy bizarrely.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, they don't match any other evolutionary animal. So, like, where did they come from?
Yeah.
But, like, I love octopus. They're so freaking smart. And just, like, the way that they act and react to things is, like, hilarious. So, there was this story about an aquarium, and they had this octopus. And this octopus memorized the guards' walking patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like the security guards at night, and they couldn't figure out how these exotic fish kept disappearing from their tank. They're like, nobody's come in, nobody's come out. Like, security guards are like, we haven't seen anything. And then security guards changed up their pattern, and this octopus was getting out of his tank, going across the aquarium and stealing the fish, eating them, and then going back to his tank.
Yeah.
And like, his tank was locked, so they're like, we don't know how this happened.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, but like, you don't like give them enough mental stimulation.
Yeah.
They'll like just create havoc.
Yeah. There's actually like, there's a couple theories like that. They're not really conspiracy theories, but they are like theories that are out there. Like, I think one of the theories is that just all life basically stemmed from outer space. Like when the asteroid hit Earth, like the big one that kind of broke off the moon from Earth, because the moon used to be a part of Earth, and then a big giant asteroid came and split it off in two. I think there's a theory floating around that basically all life came from that asteroid. That there was life on that asteroid, and basically it got brought over, and when it hit Earth, the bacteria or whatever it was basically kind of permeated onto Earth and evolved from there and stuff like that. There's also theories that mushrooms specifically come from outer space and stuff like that.
Mushrooms are a weird one because, like, they have these, like, undergrowth where, like...
Mycelium.
Yeah. Then, like, the mycelium are, like, a huge net all over.
Yeah.
And, like, they can, like, send signals through that, which is crazy that, like, mushrooms can talk to each other, basically.
Yeah, and other plants.
Yeah.
And actually, the biggest living organism on Earth is actually a mushroom.
I thought it was an aspen grove.
Yeah, it is, but it's a mushroom. It's like an aspen, like it's a mycelium network under an aspen grove.
Oh, I thought it was the aspen grove itself, because aspen trees all stem from, like, one root.
Yeah, no, it's like the mycelium mushroom. There's one giant mushroom under this forest, basically.
Cool.
So basically, kind of anywhere you dig, you're digging, at least in this forest, you're digging into this, like, mushroom, essentially, that lives underground. So, like, yeah, the biggest living organism on Earth is, like, a mushroom. And actually, what's kind of interesting is that mushrooms and fungi are actually more closely related to animals than they are to plants.
Yeah.
Because they breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, whereas plants, do the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. There was this researcher that was trying to determine if trees can talk to each other. And she determined that they give off very, very faint signals. So there is a possibility that trees talk to each other. But, like, that we would never understand.
Well, no, because they're, like, more ancient beings than we are, really. But
yeah.
There are studies or whatever of basically plants that they kind of, I don't know, it's like a signal, maybe a chemical signal.
I think it's like a chemical
And I think it actually is delivered through, like, the root systems and the mycelium. But, like, if there is say, like, a caterpillar that is eating the leaves of one tree.
Yeah, it's like an infestation.
Well, all the other trees will change the taste of their leaves to make it unappealing to these caterpillars because this one tree is being eaten by, like, caterpillars or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Trees are so cool and so crazy. We're like, yeah, they're just trees, and we cut them down and use them for wood and eat their fruits and whatever else. But, like, to think that they have, like, a whole other, like, side to them that we don't know.
Well, and, like, the thing is if the goal of life is reproduction, which basically it is, like, that's the ultimate goal of life when you break it down to the most basic, component is to continue on life, right?
Sure.
For any species, the most basic thing that it is programmed to do is to continue on the species.
Yeah.
We don't know why, but, well, because it's better than not living, I guess. But, so, if that's the ultimate goal, then trees are actually doing it, like, they're tricking us, basically, because that's, like, they grow these fruits that we like, and so we eat the fruit and shit, and, like, you know what I mean? So they're actually, like, almost smarter than we are, because, like, we're taking care of trees. We're, like, yes, we do cut them down and use them and stuff like that, but we're also we take care of trees, We, like, help them out a lot. So they're almost, like, smarter than we are.
Yeah, actually, there was this funny tweet or Twitter post or something that I read, and it was like, so if you really think about it, we're not farming trees. Trees are farming us because they live longer than we do.
Yeah.
And when we die, they use us to create more of them.
Yeah.
It's just a funny thing.
Yeah. I've actually thought about that in regards to mushrooms before. Is like mushrooms grow on dead things. And some mushrooms are poisonous. So, like, if you eat a mushroom and you die, more mushrooms grow on top of you. So like mushrooms are almost like in a way like trying to trap us and like hunt us and like create more mushrooms by like killing us in a way, which is kind of crazy to think about.
They're the true farmers.
Yeah, and actually, there is this book. I think it was it *Sapiens*? I think it was *Sapiens*. Yeah, where the author of that book, Johann Noval Harari. It's a real hard name to say. Anyway, he makes the case that wheat. We've talked about it on this podcast before, but wheat is actually far more evolutionarily advanced than we are, because wheat came before us and we take care of wheat, and we basically propagated wheat across the entire world. It's like one of the biggest crops that's grown across the entire world because it makes bread, right?
Yeah.
So we've spread wheat across the entire world. We take care of it. We make sure that it has a place to grow and stuff. And yes, we but so basically, who's winning in that point? You know what I mean? Like, we're taking care of wheat. We're making sure that we're propagating the species of wheat. Whereas it's just kind of interesting to think about. It's like kind of an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Oh, we talked about this on the last podcast, but like, I love when thought experiments become real experiments.
Mm-hmm.
So like theoretical science becoming real science. So the example I'm thinking of is there was this thought experiment that existed for a long time where it was if a blind person holds an object and like can feel it and touch it and whatever else,
Mm-hmm.
can they identify that same object when they get their sight back?
Mm-hmm.
And there was lots of like, yes, no, because this, because that, whatever. So science, I don't know how, but they got these blind people and they got these objects, and then they gave these blind people, these blind from birth or blind for many, many years people, they gave them their sight back through like science. I don't know how. And these people could not identify which objects that they had previously felt.
Yeah.
Which is like, I don't know. I just love it when theoretical science becomes real science.
I mean, that's basically the whole point of science, right? Is to come up with some sort of theory and then to test that theory. That's what science is.
But there was just so many years that like they couldn't possibly test this theory.
Yeah. But I mean, like with the evolution of technology and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that's what science is you come up with an idea and you're like, I wonder if this, and then you test it. And you try and replicate it as many times as possible successfully, and then you get it peer reviewed, and then eventually it becomes a thing,
Yeah, the bureaucracy of science.
Yeah, no, but like the thing is that science is a bureaucracy, right? Because lots of the stuff that gets funding is the stuff that is paid for by big corporations or stuff like that. So they're looking for an outcome.
Yeah.
And they're funding it so you can test this outcome. So that's why a lot of science, and I think a lot of people don't trust science sometimes, is because of where the funding comes from, basically. Like, they're looking for an outcome, and they're basically using these scientists to somehow prove that outcome, but maybe not in the most, like, ethical science way, Like,
yeah, they're like, hey, we want this outcome. Make an experiment that proves this outcome.
Kind of, yeah.
Instead of being like, hey, here's an experiment.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're, like, working backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, it's unfortunate because, like, but that's just where the funding comes from, right? Is like, and you need money to do science, and unfortunately, the people with the most amount of money are these giant corporations and stuff like that. So yeah,
which is unfortunate, but it's the way the world works, I guess.
It is the way the world works, yes, but I mean, there is obviously real science that goes on out there too.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been like this, the HIV virus, there's been like a cure that's been found, like, not just once, but like multiple times, that like the corporations will buy up and like nobody will ever hear about it again.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing happened with like the electric car, or the how many times have we heard that there's a cure for cancer, there's a cure for this or whatever, and
Yeah.
then
Well, because the pharmaceutical companies make so much more money on sick people than they do curing one person once.
yeah, no, exactly. Make way more money on sick people, and it's the same. Like, there's a whole documentary on the electric car thing. It was like, who killed the electric car or whatever,
Yeah.
and like the whole thing about it is like, they had electric car technology back in the 90s, and then these auto corporations and stuff just basically bought up all the patents for it, and then never just sat on it and never released it because, or oil and gas and fossil fuel extractors, they make so much money from that
Yeah.
like, what they don't want electric cars and stuff like that, which is kind of crazy to think about, especially with all the data suggesting that fossil fuels and stuff like that are like basically causing global warming.
Yeah, and like that's another thing. It's like my dad and I actually had this argument. It's like, okay, Alberta is like this huge fossil fuel oil producer, but we don't use most of our oil. We like ship it off somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that's like a whole other thing. But like in like my children's lives, there's gonna be huge catastrophes. There already is huge catastrophes.
Yeah.
Australia's on fire. Icebergs are melting, which is like a
Ice
proven.
caps.
What'd I say?
Icebergs.
Yeah, well, whatever. But there's like these huge things are happening that we have evidence and like empirical data for.
Yeah.
And people are still like, that's not happening.
Well, like, the thing is that like 97% of scientists or something agree that global warming is happening. It's just whether or not it's like, the world always goes through cooling and warming periods, right? So the real question is, are humans really affecting that natural cycle? And like, I believe we are. I'm not like arguing against global warming. I'm just taking the other side because that's what I do.
No,
But
and I think that like it's true, and like a lot of the like evidence and theories and whatever else says that like humans were basically born into this world right after the last ice age. So
Yeah.
the world's been slowly warming up since then.
Yeah.
But like I think that we are like pushing it way faster than it was ever supposed to be going.
it's possible, yeah. But like, I mean, also we just understand so little about actual climate. Like, we understand kind of weather, but climate's a whole different thing. Climate's like the big long-term thing of weather, and like,
But like you can read it in the rocks.
yeah, but like everything is so interconnected. Like, for example, I think it was a volcano erupted sometime in the Dark Ages, and that caused basically a mini ice age. It caused a period of cooling that was basically a mini ice age in like the medieval periods because of one volcano erupting in one spot. It affected the whole world globally. Like, there's shit like that like we just like don't really fully understand yet, like we have really good grasps on things, and we have like really good ideas and theories, but it's just like it's so complicated because everything is so interconnected, and it's crazy to think about how interconnected everything is on this planet.
Yeah, and even like the whole thing of like Pangea, where like the whole world at one point was one continent and we like split off, right? Like that was probably a climate change and a thing. But with like the way that we're heating up the world and the way that the ice caps and stuff are melting, like part of our landmass is going to be underwater in the next 10 years, 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
And like whether or not that's like part of the cycle or not, it still affects millions, if not billions of people.
Yeah, most people live on the coast because
it's more mild weather.
Well, yeah, and also just like that's where people have typically lived, just because shipping, and it's a good source of food, and so you establish a settlement on the coast because like it's just a solid place to live. The problem with that is obviously hurricanes, typhoons, shit like that. But New York is actually below sea level, so like
so is lots of points in Europe are too.
Yeah, like one of the biggest cities, probably one of the most famous cities in the world, is pretty fucked, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
and like, there's not much we can do to reverse the damage that's already been caused. Like, unless we come up with some new technology or something.
Oh, actually, sorry. Talking
bad.
about reversing damage, I saw this super cool article that I read the other day, and it was, this is over the period of like 20 years, but it shows that climate, or not climate, but like environmental stuff can be reversed.
Mm-hmm.
And not even, like, it's not even difficult. Well, you know, depending on who you are, I guess. But this person lived in this area in South America, and they left for a couple years, 10 years or whatever, and they came back, and this area had been, like, deforested, and, like, the animals were gone, and, like, the rivers and the streams and stuff that like went through that area were like dried up or like polluted, and this person was just so upset. So him and his wife started this, and like they got a bunch of volunteers and stuff, but basically they started replanting the like native plants and trees and stuff in that area.
Yeah.
And like 10 or 20 years later now, there's endangered species that are thriving there. There's like more water in this one area than there has been, and like the streams pop back up, and there's like springs that like reopened.
Yeah.
But because they like started replanting stuff, and like there's animals that came in that they thought were like extirpated, but like once this forest started growing, there's this crazy amazing environment now.
Yeah.
And it didn't take them very long. It took them like 10 years. And I was like 2 to 20 people doing that.
Yeah. But like stuff like that is cool, and it's very like hopeful and stuff, but like the problem like with global warming is like the carbon that's in the atmosphere. And
No, I know that, but I'm talking about like the way that we've just like destroyed environments.
yeah.
Like, not even talking about like global warming at this point, but just like the environments that we've absolutely decimated
Yeah.
can be brought back.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't know. Like, see, hearing something like that, it just doesn't seem very surprising to me. It's kind of like, well, yeah, like, you just have to work at it. You know, you, instead of destroying the environment, you work to building it. That just, like, almost seems obvious to me. Do you know what I mean?
But, like, nobody does that.
Well, some people do it, yeah. Like,
I've
look
heard...
at about all the people who go out there and plant trees and stuff like that. Like,
right. But, like, a lot of times... So my dad is a logger, and he's been in the forest industry for, like, over 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And they will go out, and they will, like, just cut down an entire section.
Yeah.
And then they'll get that replanted.
Yeah.
And then they'll move over and cut down that section. And that will continue for like 10 years, where they'll just go to different sections and cut down those trees. And then when they replant them, they're just replanting them to cut them down again. Not so that the environment is helped.
Yeah, okay. But that's actually pretty good practice, I would say.
Like, no, it's a good...
Jesus, cat. That was the most ungraceful thing that I have ever experienced.
Yeah, it's just... to just like have that like drive where like for 2 people and like some volunteers to like bring back like 100 acres of forest and like wildlife and stuff. That's an crazy amazing feat to do.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
And like people are like, oh no, this place is destroyed, like the animals are gone, they're extirpated, they're not gonna come back.
Mm.
But like just like reading the story is like, well, actually now these like endangered species are thriving, and like animals have come back into the area that they thought were extirpated and stuff like that. And it's just like, I don't know, it's just like this really cool story of what like 2 people can start.
Yeah. The real problem with all of this is that to care about the environment, you have to be happy. Like, you have to be so okay with yourself and secure in your own beliefs and just happy that you can now care about something other than yourself. Because, like, I've experienced it myself, is, like, when I am in a good place, I'm more prone to recycle. I'm more prone to composting and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I'm more prone to make the decision, and you all like financial security plays a role in that too, right?
Oh,
Like
totally.
if I have the extra money, like I'm willing to spend it on things that are more sustainable because unfortunately, more sustainable things usually cost a little bit more.
Because the companies that make them aren't constantly selling them.
Exactly. Well, like that's the thing. And like so you like unfortunately to be an environmentalist or to like be just conscious about the environment, you have to be happy. Like and it's just so like there's so many people out there that just aren't happy and they don't give a fuck about the environment because they're so caught up in their own lives and like what's happening in their lives and they're probably miserable and they're just trying to get by. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to care about anything else when you're stuck in a cycle like that.
Yeah, and actually, like, talking about that is, like, January is one of the, like, highest months percentages for suicides.
Yeah.
And, it's just, like, people just, like, aren't satisfied after the holidays. They're upset in their jobs, especially in Canada. Like, we don't get enough sunlight in January. Because, like, the darkest day of the year is, like, somewhere at the end of
December 21st.
Nice.
It's the winter solstice.
I'm like, I can't remember. It's like December 19th, December 20th.
It's always the 21st.
I don't know.
Isn't it? Like, summer solstice is June 21st. Winter solstice is December 21st.
Sure. Okay, so the darkest day of the year is like the end of December. But at that point, then there's like Christmas and family and these things happening. But then after all that's gone and all of that, like, merriment and like the time off of work and the time spent with like friends or family or coworkers even is gone and you're back to the regular old grind in January, then lots of people get like even more depressed if they were before, or they like start to feel really down on themselves. And especially like in our culture with all of these like New Year's resolutions, it's like lots of people make New Year's resolutions that are just like nearly impossible to keep. And then they break them, and then they're really down on themselves.
Yeah. I suspect that the third Monday in January is called Blue Monday, because that's when most people give up on their New Year's resolutions.
Probably.
That's why instead of, like, making a New Year's resolution or whatever, personally, I set goals that I would like to accomplish in the year. And they're quantitative goals, you know?
What are some of your goals?
Well, it's like stuff like, so like this year I would like to volunteer like 48 hours of my time to something that, you know, I don't know, whether just volunteer like at a music festival or just helping something in a non-profit way, I guess. So I would like to volunteer like 48 hours of my time. I would like to just keep up with the podcast schedules that I've set for myself, and that's a whole other thing, but climb 10 summit 10 mountains, stuff like that, read 15 books. It's quantitative things that I can like track the progress on.
Yeah.
And like honestly, I've had some of these goals for the past like 3 years. Like I've had the goal to read 15 books in a year for the past 2 years, and I haven't met that goal. You know, last year I got real close. I read 14.
Nice.
But for some reason, I just couldn't get that. I think it's like this weird mental thing that like I almost didn't want to accomplish the goal or something, because like I totally could have.
Yeah, you were almost done
I could have totally
book.
got that 15th book in, but I like didn't for some reason. So like I'm really gonna try and push myself to like get 15 books in this year, and like same with the mountains, like summiting 10 mountains. Like I've had that goal.
Did we do like 8 mountains last year?
We did like 4 last year, but
no, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. We didn't do that much. But the year before that, I did 9.
Yeah.
And again, I was like so close, and if I could have probably just like gone out there and did it and got that 10th one, but for some reason I didn't. So like that, it's been a goal of mine for the past like 3 years, and
yeah,
it's interesting. Like,
do you feel like at the end of the year, when you've gotten so close but like you haven't achieved it, do you feel like really down?
No. I don't. I honestly don't. I think it's like it's almost just like more of a challenge. Like, okay, this year I'm gonna do it, and like it's like it's a way for me to track progress and like where I'm at in my life and stuff.
I
Like,
think that that's a really healthy way of looking at it, which is why I asked you that.
yeah,
Because I know personally, if I set a goal and I don't reach it, I'm like immediately like, why didn't I do this? And I start self-analyzing and I like really get into it and I'm like, oh my god, why didn't I finish this? Like I was so close. And
but that like the thing is that if you set a goal and you don't reach it, then you do that's healthy, because you obviously have this thing that you want to do, and if you weren't able to accomplish it, you should look at why you weren't able to accomplish it and what's holding you back
But
and
I
what you
think
need to do to accomplish that goal.
I think that the part that's unhealthy is that I get really down on myself after that. It's like, oh man, I'm just a piece of crap. Oh man, I didn't do that, so like I'm not worth anything.
Yeah. The way you talk to yourself is definitely important, and you shouldn't view it as like, oh, I'm worthless because I didn't accomplish this goal. But you should think of it like, why didn't I accomplish this goal? What's holding me back from accomplishing this goal? Like, but what can I do to accomplish this goal in the future?
That's fair.
That's a healthy way to look at it.
Yeah. Definitely.
The self-talk we don't realize, I think a lot of people don't realize, affects our mental state. So if you're always like, oh, I'm just a big piece of crap, haha, even if you think you're joking about it, you're not.
Yeah, I read this thing, it was like, even when you're like joking around, you're bringing yourself down.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing that like a lot of people that on like Tumblr that I follow, they talk about this a lot, is like, when you do self-talk and you talk to yourself about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you say things like, oh, you're worthless because you didn't do this,
Mm-hmm.
would you ever say that to anybody else in your life?
Probably not.
No. So why are you saying it to yourself?
Yeah. There's actually there's a really good book out there. I know a lot of people don't like Jordan Peterson, but he wrote a really good book that's called 12 Rules for Life, and one of the rules or whatever in there is treat yourself like you would treat someone you're responsible for caring for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because lots of people, we're our own worst critics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
we do have that negative self-talk and stuff like that, and it's just, but we would, or even just treat yourself like you would treat your fucking pet, like,
or like your best friend or your partner,
like,
or anything.
We're so nice to like things that we are responsible for caring for.
Yeah.
But we treat ourselves like crap.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I used to like have, like, obviously there's like a healthy amount of self-deprecating humor and there's an unhealthy amount. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay to, have some sort of self-deprecating humor. Like, sometimes it's funny or whatever. But like, I used to just be so self-deprecating, and it's something that I actually noticed has kind of changed in my life, is like, I don't do that as much anymore. Like, obviously sometimes, like, most of the times I say things because I think they're going to be funny. So I don't actually believe in it. So sometimes like I'll throw something self-deprecating out there and I just said it because like I know it's not true, but I think it's going to be funny. But like what my really good friend Josh, who's been on the podcast before, anytime anybody has any sort of self-deprecating stuff, he's like, he kind of like calls you out on it and like...
Yeah, he totally does.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Yeah. Which is like, because Josh is like one of the nicest people in the entire world. Like, so nice. And like, he's right, honestly. Like, the way you talk to yourself is going to frame the way you think about yourself, and it's going to frame your actions. And
yeah,
you're going to do things or not do things based on the way that you're talking to yourself and whether you think you are worthy of those things,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's also like something that I used to do is I used to apologize for everything. Like everything was always my fault. I'd be like, oh, sorry. And that's something that I changed about my life too. It's just like, because it's not like when you go through life like that, being like apologizing for everything because you think it's your fault, it affects you because it's not your fault. Don't apologize for shit unless you have done something wrong. Don't apologize.
Something that I read and I try to do in my life, talking about like the sorry stuff, is instead of apologizing, tell the person that you appreciate them. Mm-hmm. So like, if I made you wait for me for like 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, I was late. Instead of coming in and being like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I was late, I'm such a piece of crap, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Be coming in and being like, I'm so happy that you waited for me, like, I appreciate your patience.
Yeah.
And it creates such a different tone immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something I've been trying to do.
Well, it's like, the thing is, it's like, when you do stuff like that, like, because just so many interactions that you have with other humans are just so subconscious and, like, not really in the forefront of your brain, but they affect the way that the whole interaction is going to play out. You know what I mean? Which is crazy to think, like, most of the stuff we do, we're barely even thinking about. And it's just ingrained in our brains from habit and genetics and stuff like that. But we're barely even conscious of what we are doing as, like, human beings. And we think we're these, like, conscious beings, but, like, we're barely in control of what we're doing. We're barely in control of what we're doing. We're just reacting to the fucking environment. And, like, sometimes, like, how many times have you been doing something and in your mind you're like, I shouldn't be doing this?
Oh, all the time.
But you still do it.
I bite my nails and I'm like, why am I biting my nails? Like, I hate doing this.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, it's like these patterns that just get ingrained into your brain. And it's so, like, it takes so much mental energy to break habits, which is crazy, because, like, you know it's wrong, you know you shouldn't be doing it, but you do it anyway. And even as you're doing it, you think about how you shouldn't be doing this. And it's like, who's actually in fucking control here? Like, what are we? Like, what? Yeah. It's just crazy thing to think about. Are you climbing on me again?
Just going after your laptop.
Why? Stop it.
Talking about, like, habits and also about, like, language. In high school, I read this thing and my mom and me talked about it. It was like, when somebody says something negative to you, especially, like, in high school, people are assholes. Mm. So, like, in high school, if somebody was to tell you you're ugly, it would take 3 to 5 people or times of somebody telling you that you're pretty before it would, like, balance it out. Mm-hmm. So, because, like, negative things in our life take up so much more space in our brains.
Yep. Well, like, honestly, it's like an evolutionary thing, right? Is because we're constantly trying to be the best life forms that we can be, right? So that one negative comment is obviously going to stick in your brain a lot more because you're like, that's an area where I need to improve. Whereas, like, if people just come, like, compliments, I don't even know how to take compliments most of the time. And, like, most of the time you're like, oh, cool. They do make you feel good, obviously, and worthy. But, like, that one negative thing that anybody says will, like, get you way more wrapped up in it than any compliment that anybody will give you.
Totally. And that's, like, something my mom did for me when I was in high school is, like, if I ever, like, had, like, negative talk about myself or, like, I said, hey, like, this happened at school, like, the one time I was like, this person said I wasn't very pretty, and then the next day I woke up and there was, like, notes all over my bathroom telling me how pretty I am, what she liked about me, all of the, like, awesome things about me, and I was just like, it was so impactful that, like, now when I go throughout life, it's just like, I constantly think, like, okay, like, what is something I can do that's gonna have a positive impact on people? Because, like, even at, like, malls or shopping centers or whatever, like, my friends get embarrassed sometimes because I'll, like, see somebody's shoes or jacket or hairstyle or whatever and be like, oh my gosh, that is such a pretty jacket. And the person is usually, like, really taken aback and is like, oh, well, thank you. Like, the amount of times where I've gotten, like, this crazy story about how they got this piece of clothing. Yeah. Or, like, how they didn't know if they should wear this piece of clothing, but then they did, and, like, my one comment made their day.
Yeah. Well, that's, like, because, like, you go out into public places like that, and you constantly feel like everybody's judging you, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even though most people probably don't give a fuck. Like, just based on going through life, like, I can only base it off of my own experience, obviously, but just, like, knowing how I go through life, I'm barely paying attention to anything that's going on around me, you know? Like, you are, but you aren't, like, because you're so wrapped up in your own world.
Yeah.
But, like, that one compliment or that one nice thing that somebody says to you could completely change around that person's day, right?
And yeah, and it has actually, which is this crazy thing. And like, I do it because I genuinely like the piece of clothing they're wearing, and sometimes I'm wondering where they got it.
Yeah.
But this one lady, we were on an escalator, and I complimented her shoes, and she told me where she got them and how she like really likes wearing them and stuff. And then like, I was in a mall, and like later she ran into me, and she's like, hey, your comment completely changed my day. Like, I was having a really bad day, and all I've been able to think of is how nice that comment was, and like from a complete random stranger too. And I was like, oh well, like, you're welcome, I guess, but like, I really do just like your shoes. Like,
yeah.
I didn't do it for any other reason, but like, I'm really happy it made your day. And like, just to think that like, that nice thing that you say or do for somebody, or like opening the door, or like carrying groceries out for like an old person or whatever, is like
just smiling.
Yeah, if somebody looks at you and you're like grumpy as all out, like, it's way more pleasant to like look at somebody and have them be like, oh hey, and smile.
Yeah.
And like, that could be the difference in their day.
Well, no, totally. And like, that's why we all just need to practice being nicer to people. And that's kind of like what karma is, the way that I understand it, at least. Like, a lot of people think, I've talked about it on this podcast before, but a lot of people think that karma is like, you know, you kind of like, you do good things, so good things are going to happen to you, or you do bad things, so bad things are going to happen to you. But what karma more is you do nice things for people, you compliment people, you smile at people, you just be a genuinely good person in the world, and that is going to propagate outwards, because that compliment that you gave to that person is going to change their mind state. It is going to put them in a better mood. Maybe they'll compliment somebody, and then that is going to have an effect on that person. It's going to put them in a better mood, and that's going to propagate outwards.
It like promotes kindness out in the world that might eventually come back and affect you.
Yes, but like, just because like being nice to people puts people in a good mood, and they are then more likely to be nice to other people, and the opposite is true. If you're a dick to somebody and you know, you're an asshole, it's going to put that person in a negative mood, and they are more likely to say go home and be an asshole to their family because you were an asshole to them or whatever. And like, that's what karma kind of is, you know? Do good things, be nice to people, because it just propagates goodness in the world.
Yeah. I think that's like a huge thing of like, what I personally live for is to like be kind to people and do good things. It's like, I was a Christian for a lot of my life, and I just like, it just suddenly just didn't make sense to me anymore.
Yeah.
Like the Bible and stuff, like there's a lot of good things in it, but like for a lot of it, it just didn't make sense. But the like one thing I still consistently do is like, I think that it's very important to go through life being kind to people. Whether or not that gets me into heaven or puts me in hell is irregardless. Like, I think that it's important to be kind to people just to be kind to them.
Well, yeah, it's like, you shouldn't be living your life
for like some reward.
That happens after you die. Especially if it's affecting the way that you live your life in a negative way or whatever. Like, live this life. You're in this life right now. Nobody knows what happens when you die, and nobody can know, because you have to die. And like, people have theories like they've been dead and been brought back or whatever, but like,
then did you really die?
Exactly. No, you didn't. You didn't actually die. You could be claimed to be dead, and your heart, say, stopped for 5 minutes, and you were technically dead on the table. But I think that your body is just going through, like, there's so many like chemical dumps that happen in your brain when you die, that like, there's dimethyltryptamine, DMT, is a chemical that is the most potent psychedelic found in the world. And it occurs naturally in our bodies. And I think it floods when you are born, and it floods when you die. It floods your brain. So the theory, at least, is that this psychedelic compound that is naturally found in our bodies is some sort of transitory. Wow, that was hard to say, and I didn't even say it right. Anyways, it's some sort of like transition chemical, you know, that like kind of helps the passage of whatever the next stage in life may be or whatever. And so like I think a lot of things when people are having like those after death experiences, it's just you're getting this giant psychedelic chemical dump that is kind of affecting the way you see it, right?
Yeah.
So nobody really knows what happens when you die. So you should really just try and make this life, the one that you are currently living in, the best life that you can possibly have.
Yeah.
And don't live it based on some reward system that happens after you die.
And also like
unless that's the only way that you're gonna be a good person, then definitely live your life that way.
But like also you shouldn't live your life according to other people either.
No,
which is
never.
what a lot of people do is like, oh, I want to do this because I was told it was the right thing, or I was told this is the best path for me. It's like, dude, just live your life.
Yeah.
If you're not happy doing what you're doing, don't fucking do it.
Exactly. Because the reality of things is that life is quite short, it's quite fragile, and it could end at any time.
Oh, definitely.
So, honestly, you should just do the things that make you happy. Because you never know when it's going to end. And just do the things, go for the things, do the things that make you happy. Take that trip, snowboard, whatever it is. Whatever the things that make you happy, do those things. And try to be nice to people.
And like talking about like doing things that make you happy is like try new things.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like I didn't know last year at this time that drawing and painting made me happy.
Yeah.
Until I started doing it.
Yeah.
And now it's one of the activities that I most look forward to is like drawing or painting or creating things.
Yeah.
It's like this huge part of my life now that wasn't a part at all a year ago.
Honestly, it's the same with podcasting for me. Is when I started podcasting like 3 or 4 years ago now, like I would have never thought that like I was a fan of podcasts. I listened to a lot of podcasts, but I was like a fucking socially awkward introvert that just, I don't know, like podcasting has changed me in such a way because like now I'm just better at having conversations with people, and I didn't know that that's like something that I would enjoy so much, is inviting strangers for the most part into my house to have conversations with them. I never knew that I would find so much joy in that and that it would become such a huge part of my life. Like the amount of times where I've left podcasts and I've just been like almost on the verge of like a rapturous experience has been countless, and it's just really interesting that I found that in something that I wasn't very good at even and was terrified to do.
Yeah.
Which was just having conversations with people.
Yeah, that's really cool though. And so like I think that's why it's important to like constantly be trying new things and like figuring out what makes you happy. Because what makes your friends happy, what makes your parents happy, what makes your siblings or your significant other happy might not make you happy. And that's fine. That's totally okay. But you need to figure out what it is that you're going to look forward to after work. That you're going to want to do with your free time.
Yeah. Or do for work.
Yeah.
In that matter. Like,
yeah.
I mean, not everybody can have their ideal job. Like, I don't have my ideal job. I have a day job and stuff. But at least it's not terrible. I don't hate going to work every day. So that's at least something. And it provides the lifestyle that I would like to live.
Yeah.
And it allows me to do this thing that I find very fulfilling in my spare time. Actually, a couple of things that I find very fulfilling in my spare time. It allows me to podcast, allows me to snowboard, and it allows me to travel. And those things that it allows me to do more than make up for it not being my ideal job. Do you know what I mean?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the job I have is the first job I've ever had where I have enough time and money to do the things I want to do. Because previously in life, I either worked my ass off and had enough money but no time or energy.
Yeah.
Or I had a part-time job and, like, didn't have any money to do anything. So, this job isn't my ideal job and it's not a forever job, but it allows me to do a lot more than I've ever been able to.
Yeah. Just finding something like that is... the balance between like work-life balance is like a real thing, you know? Like my brother, for example, was recently looking for jobs and he had two offers, and one of the jobs required him to basically be on call 24 hours a day. It paid him more money, but then he would have to be on call 24 hours a day, you know? And like, you know, I don't mind putting in some extra time at my job if I have to.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
when I leave my job, I'm done, you know? I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah.
Like I get home and I'm like whatever, like I could have a shitty day at work, but as soon as I get home, it's just like I'm home now, like awesome, like I forget about it. I don't think about it because it doesn't need to be thought about once I'm not there, you know? And having to think about my job, like if I was on call 24 hours a day, I would be miserable.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely not for me.
Yeah.
But your brother also seems really happy with the job that he took.
Well, yeah, because he didn't take the one where he was on call 24 hours a day.
No, I
He
know,
took the
but
one that
like
paid him a little bit less money, but he knew he would be happier at.
when I met your brother, he didn't work. He was looking for a job.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference in like his outlook on life.
Actually, when you met him, he had a job. He quit his job after his wedding.
Oh, well, I barely met him before his wedding.
Okay.
Anyways, the difference in his like outlook on life and like how happy he is and stuff is like insane. Like he's so much happier having something that he likes doing.
Yeah. Definitely. That's something that he's always struggled with, honestly, is finding that job that he actually enjoys.
Yeah.
So it's good that you found that.
It is.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs that.
Well, yeah, just something. It's not even, like I said, it doesn't have to be your ideal job or something that you even enjoy doing, but it just, as long as it's not terrible and you don't hate going to work every day.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be lucky. Like, you know, we're living in somewhat of a recession right now. Like, Calgary has the highest unemployment rate in Canada right now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we have the highest unemployment rate in Canada, and honestly, the highest percentage, like the group that is most affected by that right now, is males that are under 25.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's hard out there right now. So you might not, just to survive, you might not be able to even have a job that you don't hate, which is unfortunate. But
yeah, well, that's why it's even more important to have those things in your life that you love.
Yeah. That
you enjoy doing.
Yeah, it is, because it gives you perspective at least.
Yeah. So. Makes you not hate your life.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something. So.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. So you started an Etsy page.
Yeah, so over Christmas, I gave away some of my paintings, and through doing that, got a couple of commissions, and those people told me that I should start an Etsy shop because people would pay me for my work, which I laughed at, but they kept telling me this, so I started an Etsy shop.
Yeah.
There's only 4 things on there right now, but...
Yes, but it provides an example. Why don't you tell people how to find you?
Yeah, okay, so on Etsy, it's Del Fuego Art, so like DELFUEGO. Cody will post all the links and stuff.
In the episode notes, I will, because I'm amazing.
Yeah, he is.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a difficult decision, which it shouldn't have been, to start the shop, because, like, I, like, probably most everybody am afraid of failure. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to just start a shop and then be overwhelmed and just fail.
Mm-hmm. That's why probably the majority of people don't do things, is because they're afraid to fail at it.
Yeah, but I had so many people, and, like, I have people asking for commissions, so I was like, hey, might as well.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
So I did.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, like I said, like, most people out there, they don't even try because they don't want to fail.
Yeah.
So they don't even take that step.
And if you like my shop, you should leave a smashing review.
You can review things on Etsy?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I have no idea how Etsy actually works, so.
I'm learning.
Yeah, that's fair. Cool. Well, I think that this conversation was much more productive than the last one and more enjoyable both to take part in, and I think it'll be more enjoyable to listen to as well.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. Both times were fun.
Like I said, I'll have all the links if people want to connect with you or check out your art on your Etsy shop. Those links will be in the episode notes. So
sweet.
Cool. If you liked this episode of the podcast, why not leave a review? You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. For up-to-date information on the podcast, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us at Froggy Style Productions. That's Frog, the letter E, Style Productions. For more ways to support the show, visit fsproductions.ca.